Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Coalition for Marriage YouTube channel, and the first of a couple of retrospects on interviews that have taken place over recent months. Firstly, can I thank you for looking at the interviews as they've been coming out? Can I also remind you, if you haven't already done so, to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also hop across to c4m.org.uk and subscribe to our mail list if you haven't already done that too. First, we'll be hearing from Carl Trueman, author and thought leader around cultural issues relating to marriage. Next, we'll be hearing from the interview that took place with Katie Faust, her organisation Them Before Us, which speaks for itself. Children's needs should always come before adult desires. And finally, we'll finish off today with Balazs Molnar, who wrote Hungary's strategy around promoting family and marriage, and it's really having a marvellous effect. Thank you again for looking. Thank you again for your support, and please enjoy the clips. You'll notice from Carl's accent maybe that he does originate from the UK, but he's actually at the moment, he's a lecturer in the US, a researcher, an author, publisher. And one particular book that Carl has published is something I want to talk about today, which raises, I think, an absolute seminal issue for supporters of the Coalition for Marriage. And it's a book, the title is The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. And in that book, Carl, I think you come up with the premise that A, we're in a culture war, and B, that what you might call traditional or real marriage, this concept of one man, one woman, lifelong monogamous marriage, is right at the heart, the kernel of that culture war. And Carl takes in his book, he takes the idea that, look, it wasn't that long ago when you would have been thought something very strange about you if you said that you were a woman trapped in a man's body. Yet today, it's something which is almost deemed acceptable by a lot of society. I wouldn't say the majority, but a lot of society would say that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do and to say. Carl, would you say that's an accurate summary of your book, first of all?
Yes, so in the book is an attempt to explore how the sentence, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, has come to make sense, not simply to people who've sat, say, in Judith Butler's gender theory seminars at university, but to the ordinary man or woman in the street. As you say, I suspect perhaps not a majority of people yet buy into that idea, but I would say that those who have their hands on the levers of power buy into that idea and are increasingly normalizing it within Western society. Well, the problem with that, of course, is that it flies in the face not only of centuries or the default position of humanity throughout the centuries. I think it also flies in the face of nature. What it does is it separates this notion of gender from biological sex. And more significantly, I think it prioritizes feelings about reality over reality itself. So to take an example, if you were to go to your doctor 100 years ago and say, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, your doctor would probably have acknowledged that was a problem and would have attempted to treat your mind in order to bring it into conformity with your body. Now, if you go to your doctor, certainly in certain parts of the United States, your doctor would be legally obliged to treat you as if it's the body that's the problem, not the mind. So what's happened in the last 100 years? Well, psychological feelings, psychological states have become authoritative to the extent that everything else must be bent in order to conform to them. Outward changes in society, when you think of how human beings, we traditionally find our sense of identity through looking to external markers that have a certain stability. We might say 50, 60 years ago that the typical person would look to family, religious affiliation, maybe church, family, church, a nation, in order to know who they were. Now, of course, family, church, and nation are all highly contested, very unstable concepts, and so they provide no firm ground upon which to build a sense of self-identity. So you have this interesting and I think fairly unstable collision or combination of a self that is very much rooted in subjective feelings, emerging at the very point in history where external objective factors for identity are crumbling around us. And so it's an interesting cocktail that produces this rather plastic view of what it means to be a human. So where this will all end, I don't know. But I certainly think that what we will see in the next decade or so is an increasing push to normalize transgenderism. On the sexual ethics front, we could well see the taboo against incest falling. And, the big question is, will pedophilia or engaging in sexual relations with underage children, will that become socially acceptable? One hopes not, but I'm not sure that the way sex is thought of today, i.e. what makes a sexual act moral or not is whether all the parties consent. I'm not sure that consent is strong enough to prevent pedophilia. Society is, I won't say controlled, because that implies that people are hapless automata who just believe everything they're told. But the levers
that might be the case, mind you, for the majority, but let's not get there.
It could be. I hope it isn't. But I would say that the levers of cultural influence are all in the hands of people who have no interest in promoting traditional marriage. Where I do think we can make a difference is at a local level. I mentioned earlier on that I think what social media does is it gives people narratives to make sense of the world. And when those narratives grip their imaginations, they do and think strange things. Well, I think the best antidote, the best response to the idea that marriage is not a good idea, that the best witness to the world about the value of good marriages is good marriages. And that may involve more than just having a happy marriage. I think that also involves opening your home for hospitality.
Yep.
It involves your friends, the young people in your neighborhood, in your church, in your synagogue, in your mosque, in your classes, in your little league sports teams that you may be involved in. It involves showing them that you have something good and desirable.
Katie Faust, who many of you may well have heard of, and those of you who haven't heard of, I hope you will never forget after today's podcast. Katie, would you like to say hello first?
I would like to say hello.
It's a privilege to have you. For those of you who don't know, Katie runs an organisation called Them Before Us and has been doing for some time, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that in a minute. And out of that work has come a wonderful new book with that title, Them Before Us.
We have compiled all of the best data that you're going to be able to find. And the good news is we have mountains of it. We've been studying family structure for decades. There's a lot that research can tell us about the needs of children and the importance of supporting their fundamental rights to be known and loved by their mother and father. And so we've got all the evidence. All of the studies really are on our side. But what we have never had are the stories. Right. The reason why we have continued to lose these marriage and family battles is because the other side tells a better story. In every single one of these situations, the only child-friendly solution is for the adults to do the hard thing. And so that's what we say. Single, married, gay, or straight, the onus is on you to do the hard thing, because the only other option is for the kid to do the hard thing. And we think that's an injustice. We think it should be the adults that do hard things. Marriage is the most child-friendly institution the world has ever known. And that's because it unites the two people to whom children have a natural right. And it unites them for life, right? Or that was the original intent before no-fault divorce snuck in there and said, actually not. But marriage does something for kids that no other institution will ever do. And amazingly, even a child's cohabiting biological parents cannot deliver the same benefit to children as a child's married biological parents. They're drastically more likely to live in poverty, drastically more likely to be abused, much more likely to see their parents break up, and then probably cohabit, repartner with somebody else, have another baby, break up, cycle continues, right? So cohabiting unions are incredibly unstable. We talk in the book about how there's 3 staples of a child's social emotional diet, 3 things that they need to have massive amounts of if they're going to be emotionally nourished. Those 3 things are mother's love, father's love, and stability. Let me tell you what you're doing when you're choosing divorce. Now, if it's a situation of abuse, obviously you need to get out of there, right? Because kids need to be physically safe.
Adultery, abandonment, those sorts of things.
Adultery,
absolutely right.
Addiction, right? But that's not the majority of divorces. The majority of divorces in our country is because romantically, they're unsatisfied, okay? Or they're unwilling to work through a problem that they very likely will face in their next marriage as well, okay? So what is divorce really? Divorce is when the adults say, oh, this cross is too heavy for me. Here, kid, you take it instead. That is what divorce is. And all of the research backs it up. We don't have to guess about the impact of divorce on children. We go through all the different ways that it impacts children for life. Their physical health declines, right? They are much more susceptible to different cancers, even to the common cold as they age, much more likely to have chronic health problems. It impacts their mental health. It impacts their emotional well-being. It makes it more difficult for them to form and maintain their own romantic relationships in the future. It diminishes their academic performance. Why? Why is that? Because of the 3 staples of a child's social emotional diet. There was so much fanfare around these studies that supposedly showed there was no difference between kids who are raised by 2 moms and 2 dads. And the reason why we spend the first 2 chapters of our book going through the extensive data we have on biological connection and the importance to child thriving and the differences between mothers and fathers in chapter 3 and how that contributes to child thriving is if you really understand the massive amounts of research that we have on those 2 topics, that actually answers the question of same-sex parenting, right? So the people that come to me and say, but yeah, here's all of these studies that say that kids fare no different. My quick response is, well, isn't that interesting? Because whenever we're not studying same-sex parenting, whenever we're studying any other kind of family household, whether it's single mothers or cohabiting unions or step-parent families, or even adoption situations, whenever we are not studying same-sex parenting, sociologists agree on 3 things. Number 1, biology matters. That biological parents are more protective of, connected to, and invested in their children. Number 2, that gender matters. Men and women offer distinct and complementary benefits to children. And the third one is that children suffer trauma. They suffer long-term loss and harm when they lose a parent, whether that's to death, divorce, abandonment, even if there's subsequently adoption, or reproductive technologies. So explain to me, if those 3 things are all agreed upon by social scientists, how magically none of it matters when you're talking about a situation with 2 moms or 2 dads, when they're always missing a biological parent, they're always missing the gender complementarity of mothering or fathering, and they've always suffered the trauma of parental loss. Spoiler, my mother's a lesbian. She's been in a relationship with her partner for 35 years. Almost everything I do well as a mom, I do because that's how she parented me. She was and is an incredible mother. I love her partner. She's my friend. She's not my other mother. She's my friend. But neither of them satisfied my need for fatherly love. And thank God I still had my father in my life after their divorce who provided it for me. So this idea that 2 women can give everything that a child needs or craves is just lying about everything we know about children. Kids who love that they have 2 moms, or kids who think that they're so happy that their parents got divorced, or kids that are there supporting their father who's transitioned into a woman because they're so glad he's now, living out his true identity. Those kids get a front seat at the parade, right? Those kids are the ones that are going to be lavished with love and praise, not just from the media, but from their own families. The kids who dare to express any pain or loss, which lines up more with the statistics, right? Statistically, we know that kids are suffering, and yet the stories of those kids are very hard to find because they're very expensive to tell. Marriage is the most child-friendly institution the world has ever known because it unites the 2 people to whom children have a natural right. When it comes to policy, I think that the main thing that we need to do differently is share the stories of kids. It doesn't work to just say statistically children fare best with a mother and father, right? We need to say, so what would you say to these kids who desperately longed for their missing mother and father? I mean, what would you say to them? Are you that you're the acceptable sacrifice on the altar of progress? Is that what you would tell them? because I don't think that that's true. So I do believe that we need to have the best research, and the good news is we do. But I think that when it comes to policy debate, they really need to bring the stories of children created through big fertility to the forefront of that, because otherwise you're just up against justifiably emotional parents, right? No, we need to make children the focus of these conversations, not adults. That's the incredible thing about a child-centric focus to all of these issues, is we're not against adults. We are for children.
It's a pleasure to have a guest with us today from another country, from Hungary, where many of you may know that they do have some very special family promoting policies. It's a joy to welcome Balázs Molnár, who is a vice president of the Maria Kopp Institute of Demography and Families. Balázs, would you like to say hello?
Hello, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful that I can speak about our wide-ranging family policy. The government decided to establish a public institute for researching and analyzing family policies, but also one of our very important subject or topic is to build a pro-family alliance, not just in Hungary, but also in the world and in Europe in particular. Our institute is carrying out research and analysis. Now we have data from the last 10 years, so it is already a decade, which we can certainly say that overarching family policies do influence behavior. And we certainly know from research going back to the 90s that Hungarians wish to have more children than they at the end have. And we are also trying to close that gap and, of course, analyze the problems. We have much less babies born than necessary for the renewal of the population. Practically, there is no European Union country in that sense, including the UK as well, where we would have enough babies born. So in Hungary, we have a new constitution that was adopted in 2010 and came into force in 2011. And it says that Hungary shall protect the institution of marriage as the union of one man and one woman established by voluntary decision, and the family as the basis of the survival of the nation. And of course, it continues by saying that Hungary shall support the commitment to have children. So we have a very traditional sense of marriage and very traditional sense of family in the constitution. In 2010, it was 106,000 families receiving some sort of a tax cut. And now it is more than 1 million. This is something where we have at least twofold interest. One is that the government helps with the cost of childbearing. On the other hand, it also channels Hungarians towards legitimate employment and activation. So it is not a social aid, but it is related to your legitimate employment, where we can see that in the last 10 years, we have in a country of 9.7 million, we have nearly 1 million more in employment than in 2010. The Hungarian family system allows for a real choice for families and for mothers in particular. So you can decide to stay home with one baby 3 years, and you will have family benefits for that 3 years. But you can also decide so, or the family can decide so, that you can return back to the labor market, and there will be many possibilities helping that choice. One is that we have an overarching system of public creches, public nurseries, and we have a 30% increase in nursery places in the last 12 years. And on the other hand, we also made it possible that if the child passed the age of 6 months, a mother or a father in that sense can return back to work to the labor market without any limitations, can take up employment, and they can keep the benefit. We have very unique one-time or one-off measure. So it will mean that every family who pays taxes, personal income taxes, will be refunded up to a threshold. The threshold is the average incomes tax level. So practically it means that if one of the parents took up the family taxation, but the other one was working as well, quite a large share of his or her tax will be refunded mid-February.
And I understand that you've got other incentives around buying homes,
Yes.
other things for larger families, but just to get a feel of the
Yes.
the overall package, what sort of other things do you have?
The government in that sense is responding to that need as well, and helps Hungarian families to purchase either a used home or even a new home. There is one marriage-related component in it. Anyone can take up the housing benefits, but there is a possibility in the law that you can also say that I have now 1 children, 2 children, and you can say that I will have 3 children. And for these future children, if you are married, you can also say that I will have with my wife together 3 children, despite the fact that I do not even need to have at all at the point of asking for it. You can also say that I would like to have the higher amount for 3 children. This is only open for married couples, because of course we would like to see the stability behind the commitment. If the family already has a home and pays off mortgages, then there was a rule introduced in 2018, and then it was expanded in 2019, that your already existing mortgages will be partly written off when you have a 2nd child, 3rd child, 4th child born. And in case of the 3rd child, a relatively incredible 12,000 euro is written off your already existing mortgages. And then we have had a big package of so-called Family Protection Action Plan, and one point was support for purchasing cars for large families. Large families 3+ in Hungary, so 3+ children. These large families can purchase a car, which is a 7-seater. It has to be a 7-seater, and you receive roughly £6,800 towards the purchase price. This is a subsidy. You do not have to pay it back. 2 measures are targeting those who would like to give birth at a younger age. One is that if you are a university student, or you are giving birth right after your university or tertiary education, then you will receive a higher maternity benefit than you would have because you do not have the prior Social Security contributing periods. And the other one is that we see that we in Hungary have more women in tertiary education than men. I believe this is a global trend now. But of course, well-educated women would like to make a career as well. What the government has decided that mothers, it only targets mothers who still have outstanding student loans, will be able to reduce their student loans by the remaining half if they give birth to a 2nd child, and the entire amount which is still to be paid by the mother is taken over by the state if that woman received the 3rd child. We all know that children from intact families, they do fare better in education, in criminal records, and so on. Which does not mean that divorce would not happen, and also that the state should do anything about that. On the other hand, advocating for marriages and advocating for stable partnership is something which we believe that is important. We have more children born in wedlock in 2020 than we had in 2010. Single-parent families are helped in many ways in Hungary. We have a little bit higher benefits for those who raise children alone. This is not that much higher that it would prevent them from marrying. It would incentivize separation or not living as a family, as you rightly mentioned. And as I have said, the constitution is very clear in that regard as well, that we support marriage, we support child rearing, and we believe that without families as a basic building block of the society, we will not have a happy and prospering society. If I may quote 2 quite promising numbers. One is that we have roughly twice as many marriages in 2020 than in 2010. And the 2021 figures are just as promising. Just because we have much more marriages, we do not see a negative trend in terms of divorces. And we have now 15,000 divorces, and we used to have 24,000 in 2010. So there is a more than 30% decrease in divorces. You can give a lot of incentives financially, yes, but of course we believe that it is just as important that we create a pro-family or a family-friendly environment in the country. We will continue to advocate for marriage. We will continue to advocate for stability. And as I have said, it is very important that we have stability in the economy, we have stability in the labor market, because these all very much influence the demographic tendencies.